Welcome everybody. My name is Irina Bolan from the Cluj Cultural Center. We are here today as a part of the mediation workshops. Today we're discussing about the role of immersive technologies in shaping museums' experiences, about cultivating presence. And I would like to say a few words about this. I would like to say that the aim of the presentation is to examine how emerging technologies such as VR, AR, multisensory installations are reshaping the visitor's embodied connection to museum spaces. We will be talking about study cases and concepts from two books, from Museums and Technologies of Presence and Emerging Technologies and Museums, Mediating Difficult Heritage. Both books are edited by our speakers today. And I would like to say a few words about our speakers. Today with us is Theopisti Stylianou-Lambert. She's a professor at the Department of Multimedia and Graphic Arts at the Cyprus University of Technology and the leader of the Museum Lab at Science Center of Excellence. We also have with us Maria Shehade, is a senior researcher associate at the Museum Lab of Science Center of Excellence and an adjunct lecturer at the Cyprus University of Technology. I would not like to take too much of the introductory space. I would very much like to thank both Maria and Theopisti for taking their time to be in this conversation today with us. And I would just let them start their presentation.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Irina, very much for the introduction. Before we start, let me just share my screen with you. As Irina said, my name is Maria Shehade. I'm a senior research associate at the Museum Lab of the Science Center of Excellence in Cyprus. And Theopisti Stylianou-Lambert is a professor at the Cyprus University of Technology and the leader of our lab at Science. We would like to thank Irina, her team at the Cluj Cultural Center for the kind invitation to present at this event and be part of the Cultural Mediation Workshop Series, and also thank everyone here who joined us today. Before we dive into the concept of presence and the use of immersive technologies in museums, I would like to pass the floor to Theopisti for a short introduction about our institution and our lab, followed by an overview of the main theoretical underpinnings of our presentation.
Hello, everyone. So our lab is part of Science Center of Excellence in Nicosia, Cyprus. And for those who don't know, Science is a research and innovation center on immersive media, smart systems, and emerging technologies. It's supported by the European Union, the Republic of Cyprus, and its founding partners, the Municipality of Nicosia, the University College London, the Max Planck Institute for Informatics, and the three state universities of Cyprus. On the slide, you can see our brand new building. We just moved there last April. Now, our group is a museum lab, and it was created within the context of the center in 2018. The Museum Lab is one of 20 research groups at Science and is dedicated to the exploration of emerging technologies in museums and other heritage sites. We are, in general, an interdisciplinary team with expertise in museum studies, history, arts, archaeology, heritage management, photography, and new technologies. Actually, we just recently, September, merged with another group called Ithaca, which is emphasizing immersive technologies. So actually, we're much more, many people and more emphasis on technology nowadays. But if I had to quickly sum up our interests and values, I will say that first, we're especially interested in technologies which do not involve screens, for example, tablets and mobile phones. We focus instead on technologies that can be seamless as possible, and that can ideally combine the physical with the digital. Second, we are interested in technological solutions that can provide novel experiences that are not possible without technology. And finally, we are critical of the uncritical use of technology in museums and technology-first kind of thinking, For example, we sometimes observe an impulse to use technology where it's not needed, or to impose a technology in a museum because it's available. In today's presentation, we'll focus on the concept of presence and how it applies to museums when using emerging and immersive technologies. More specifically, in the first part of the presentation, we'll first unpack the concept of presence and related terms such as embodiment and immersion. In the second part, my colleague Maria Shehade will take over, and through specific examples of case studies, we'll explore how immersive technologies in museum spaces can facilitate presence by these 4 boxes, creating multi-sensory experiences, facilitating a sense of embodiment, fostering affective and empathetic responses, and making visible the invisible by turning absence into presence. Throughout this presentation, we'll be discussing both the theoretical foundations of presence and real-world examples from case studies that are discussed in the 2 volumes that you see on the screen. The first one was published in 2023 by Routledge, is entitled Museums and Technologies of Presence, and deals with the concept of presence and how it applies to museums when using emerging technologies. The second one, published in 2022 by Berhan Press, is titled Emerging Technologies and Museums Mediating Difficult Heritage, and it focuses on the use of emerging technologies for difficult heritage. Both books bring together academics from different backgrounds to explore how emerging technologies are nowadays used or could be used in museums. So after this very short introduction, let's dive into the main part of the presentation. In recent years, museums have seen a rapid integration of immersive technologies like virtual reality, augmented reality, and multisensory installations. These technologies are transforming not only how museums present their collections, but also how visitors experience and connect with these collections and the museum space around them. For this reason, it's important to explore how these emerging technologies are influencing visitors' museum experiences, focusing on the notion of presence, that is the feeling of being fully immersed in an environment. The concept of presence is crucial because it goes beyond physical attendance in a museum space. It involves a psychological and emotional connection that allows visitors to feel as though they are part of the world and their physical environment, rather than passive observers. As technology becomes more integrated into museum settings, we need to rethink how presence is cultivated, particularly through immersive and embodied experiences. But first of all, you might have noticed that we use the words immersive and emerging technologies. What exactly do we mean by emerging technologies? The term usually refers to contemporary advances and innovations in technology that is generally used to describe either a new technology, or it may refer to the continuing development of an existing technology. It is also used for technologies that can have the potential to exert a considerable impact on the socioeconomic domain. Examples of emerging technologies are virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, holograms, artificial intelligence, deepfakes, smart systems, interactive installations, and so on. And because there is usually a very understandable confusion about the differences between VR, AR, and MR, here is a helpful diagram. It helped me, at least in the beginning, when I was trying to understand the differences. In virtual reality, the user is fully immersed in an artificial virtual environment and wears a headset. In augmented reality, virtual objects are overlaid on a real-world environment, usually with the use of AR glasses or through a mobile phone or tablet. We refer to mixed reality, usually when the user interacts both with the real world and the virtual environment. Of course, the advances in technology are so fast that the list of what is considered an emerging technology changes year by year. However, emerging technologies are usually associated with new technologies that are expected to change the status quo and have a significant impact on the future. For this reason, as you will see in this presentation, our emphasis is not on specific technologies or their newness, but on new potentials that they bring to the foreground. In the context of museums, this rapid advancement of technological developments, such as augmented, virtual, and mixed realities, holograms, projection mapping with immersive sound, and virtual museum spaces, has greatly affected current practices in the museum sector. As noted by Stonger, 21st century media technologies have excellent potential to create immersive storytelling for cultural exhibitions by heightening sensory engagement and by forging deeper cognitive and emotional contextual connections with artifacts and objects. In general, we observe an interest in immersive experiences that attempt to diversify the voices represented in museum environments, explore potential empathetic responses of the visitors, and incorporate play and game into museum learning activities. And in this context, the notion of presence has proved an important element for these types of experiences. To understand how immersive technologies are reshaping museum experiences, we first need to define the concept of presence. In its simplest form, presence refers to the sense of being there or fully engaging with a particular environment, whether real or simulated. In the context of emerging technologies and digital media, it is often defined as a psychological state of feeling present in a virtual or mediated environment. Many scholars explore how technologies and digital media can induce presence by tricking our perceptual and cognitive systems into feeling as though we're somewhere else. Although there is no single definition for presence, most definitions emphasize this subjective psychological state of mind and the engagement of senses. For example, according to Whitmer, presence is a psychological state of being there, mediated by an environment that engages our senses, captures our attention, and fosters our active involvement. Two concepts that are closely related to our sense of presence is immersion and embodiment. Although there are no commonly accepted definitions again, and in many cases immersion is used interchangeably with presence, we will attempt to briefly clarify these terms. Immersion refers to the feeling of being enveloped in an environment, particularly through the use of VR, AR, or other interactive installations that stimulate multiple senses. The more immersive an experience, the stronger the sense of presence. In this way, immersion acts as a tool to enhance presence by fully occupying the visitor's sensory and cognitive attention. So in summary, we can say that immersion refers to the technological capacity of the medium to remove the user from reality, and presence refers to the subjective psychological experience of feeling present in a mediated environment. Embodiment, on the other hand, focuses on how visitors physically interact with the space around them. Immersive systems try to mobilize the user by stimulating the body's senses, and this is related to our sense of embodiment. Through embodied experiences, visitors are not passive viewers, but active participants, moving through spaces, manipulating objects, and engaging their physical senses in meaningful ways. This creates a deeper, more personal sense of presence as the visitor's body is fully engaged with the environment. Therefore, embodiment is multisensory and results from effects of visual, auditory, tactile, olfactory, and gustatory cues. Presence then is not simply about being there in a static sense, but about how fully a visitor can engage with the space, story, and sensory experience. And this is where technology has the potential to radically alter the traditional museum experience. We are turning to the diagram we showed in the beginning. Our argument today is that immersive and embodied museum experiences with the help of technology may facilitate presence by creating multisensory experiences, facilitate embodiment, fostering effective and empathetic responses, and making visible the invisible by turning presence into absence, into presence. So now that we have unpacked the term presence and its related terms, let's turn to some practical examples of case studies illustrating these 4 dimensions of presence. This is the part my colleague Maria would take over. And this is a fun part because you can see actual examples of museums or artists engaging with these concepts. Also, remember these 4 dimensions because we're going to use them later on in the workshop after our presentation. Maria?
Okay, so let's start with how immersive technologies can facilitate presence through multisensory experiences. Now, usually traditional museum exhibits are often visually oriented, but emerging technologies enable the engagement of multiple senses, touch, sound, even smell, providing a richer interaction with the content. By stimulating multiple senses, these technologies deepen immersion and create a stronger sense of presence as visitors become fully engaged with the space and the narrative in ways that resonate on both a cognitive and an emotional level. This effect of multisensory triggers in museums and their connection to the sense of presence is a relatively understudied area, especially regarding smell and taste, which were traditionally treated as less important within the sensory hierarchies. Here we will see 2 examples of exhibitions that illustrate how smell and taste can constitute important tools in an exhibition, providing added layers of comprehension and facilitating the visitor's sense of presence. Both cases are discussed by Gavi Whitehall-Blundell in a chapter of the book Museums and Technologies of Presence. Now, the first exhibition, entitled Essence of a Painting, an olfactory exhibition, ran at the Prado Museum in Spain between April and July 2022. The exhibition focused on the smell, a work by Jan Bruegel the Elder and Peter Paul Rubens that you can see on the screen. The exhibition team selected and produced 10 fragrances associated to items, flowers, and animals out of the more than 80 species depicted in this one painting. Thanks to the 4 diffusers that you can see here on the Samsung's touchscreen monitors installed in the room, visitors could smell the 17th century objects portrayed in the painting. The visitor could select from the screen the item they wished to smell from the painting, which was consequently highlighted by a white outline, as you have seen on the video. Then all they had to do was click to the press to smell button and move their nose close to the diffuser to experience the smell. The second exhibition, also discussed in Gavi's chapter, is perhaps one of the first exhibitions that attempted to involve all senses and which used emerging technologies. Tate Britain's Tate Sensorium was an experimental exhibition which ran between August and October 2015, presenting 4 paintings from the Tate permanent collection. This experience was meant to encourage a new approach to interpreting artworks by using multisensory engagement, experimenting with what the experience of viewing art would feel like if we infuse the gallery space with non-visual sensory stimuli. Now, one of the presented paintings was the work Full Stop by John Latham, which depicts a black circle created with spray paint on an unprimed canvas. The work was augmented through the integration of sound and Mediere haptic stimuli using a device developed by Ultra Haptics. As you can see on the slide, participants stood in front of the plinth box and placed one hand palm down inside the top part of the plinth to have the haptic feedback delivered to their palm. The sensations visitors felt on their hands simulated the feeling of being sprinkled with individual dots, a clear reference to the way spray canisters dispense paint. The auditory stimuli, delivered via headphones, were synchronized with these motions and provided a deep whistling sound, reflecting the idea of small units hitting a canvas. It should be noted that the multisensory dimension of immersive museum experiences can also open new avenues of accessibility in the museum space, affecting the sense of presence for visitors with disabilities. Immersive technologies that engage multiple senses, such as tactile feedback, soundscapes, or even olfactory elements, as the ones seen in these examples, can create more inclusive environments by providing alternative modes of engagement for the disabled body. For example, haptic feedback in digital installations can offer tactile interactions for visitors with visual impairments, allowing them to feel virtual objects or textures. These approaches not only ensure that exhibitions are accessible to a wider audience, but also foster a deeper sense of presence by enabling disabled visitors to feel present and not detached in the museum space, and to experience the presence of objects in more bodily ways. Another important dimension of presence facilitated by technology is embodiment, the sense that visitors are not just passive viewers, but active participants in the museum space. Technologies such as virtual and augmented reality allow a sense of embodiment by making the visitor's body an integral part of this experience, deepening the connection to the space and enhancing this feeling of being there. In order to understand how technology can contribute to this, we have 2 examples that are presented and discussed in a chapter by Vince Diekamp, John McCormack, Lucida Isvich, Oscar Rabi, and Nina Rajic, in the book Museums and Technologies of Presence, which presents some examples of selected projects created by 3 of the authors to investigate embodied experiences in museums in relation to digital mediation. The first example is an immersive virtual reality audiovisual experience created by Lucida Isvich in 2021, entitled What Homes Are Made Of: The Architecture of Displacement. The experience is a digital reconstruction of the artist's apartment that you can see on the screen, and aims to highlight the relationship between migration, place, and identity. The work was conceived and developed during extended periods of social isolation and lockdown experienced in Melbourne during the COVID-19 pandemic, due to which the artist was not able to go home and see her family. Through the VR experience created with photogrammetry constructed out of 110 million points, visitors are granted access to the artist's home, which materializes itself as an ordinary apartment. As part of the exhibition, participants are asked to take their shoes off before putting on the headset ahead of entering the work itself. This performative process subtly prepares the viewer to discover the everyday rituals found throughout the artist's home. Now, once the viewer has the headset on, they find themselves seated in a Melbourne apartment where they can freely explore the space. Soon after, although still located in the same apartment, the viewer will notice that they're not alone anymore and that a bridge between realities has been established. That is when sounds from the artist's Croatian home appear, filling up the space with memories where her family welcomes the viewer into their home and asks them to join their Sunday lunch while her mother goes in detail describing the food she has prepared. This sense of somehow being in 2 places at once is achieved when the spatial setting of the piece begins to be augmented with these sounds. The work constitutes a sense of place by mediating personal memories with present living conditions, unsettling our perception of space with multisensory stimuli. In another example discussed in the same chapter, entitled Hidden Ribbon Leah AR Application, Oscar Rabi developed an AR interpretive application for the grounds of a heritage property located in the suburbs of Melbourne. The project aims to engage the visitors with the richly layered cultural, historical, and ecological significance of water on the grounds of this heritage property, since the gardens at Riponlia Estate are a notable example of irrigation technology from the 19th century, with special importance regarding the water system, its ecological context, and its indigenous and colonial histories. The AR app provides a site-specific interpretive experience that combines a guided walk through the gardens with interactive sound compositions. Through the AR app, users are invited to explore distinctive points of interest found on the grounds, such as a windmill, waterfall, and lake. And by panning the handheld mobile device in a vertical motion, as you see on the screen, the visual field, sky, land, horizon, and underground, stratifies into a dynamic soundscape that mixes field recordings, such as the wind or birdsong, with human presence, represented by voices and ambient traffic noise, and the sound of water coursing below ground, recorded using a sensitive geophone capable of capturing extremely faint vibrations in the soil. The work conveys a deep sense of presence by promoting an embodied experience of both site and story. It achieves this by layering multiple concurring descriptions of the site to reveal a hidden world composed of partially real and tangible, for example, the heritage-listed water reticulation system, the flowing water, the pipe shafts and roots, and the partially virtual and intangible elements, such as, for example, the indigenous stories and enduring histories of the land. Now, in addition to the capabilities we already discussed, immersive technologies are powerful tools for creating affective encounters and invoking emotional and empathetic responses in visitors. Presence, as we discussed, is a psychological and emotional state as it is a physical one. Through multisensory and embodied interactions, museums can foster strong emotional connections between visitors and the content, encouraging deeper reflection and personal investment. Such experiences can invoke empathy, allowing visitors to step into another person's perspective or relive a particular event. This capacity to foster empathy is crucial in exhibitions dealing with sensitive subjects, such as war, displacement, or human rights. By creating immersive experiences that place the visitor within these narratives, museums can facilitate a more profound emotional connection that anchors the visitor not just within the physical space of the museum, but also within the conceptual and ethical dimensions. And by empathy, we refer to two distinct components: cognitive empathy, which refers to how well an individual can perceive and understand the emotions of another, and affective or emotional empathy, which refers to the ability to vicariously experience the emotional experience of others. In general, empathy allows us to connect to ourselves and with others, while awakening us to our connectedness as part of a greater whole, which is why it's also about the presence of others. Therefore, empathetic responses are important because they can influence our worldview, perceptions of the past, present, and future, and perhaps most importantly, our actions. As Andrea Whitcomb explains, in reaching out to the senses, in seeking effective responses, multimedia installations in museums may well be more politically effective in achieving alternation in the mind of the citizen than the more traditional use of the objects in didactic displays intend on reforming the minds of the citizen. And indeed, emotional understanding is key in achieving change in the opinions and perceptions of visitors, and empathy plays an important role in this process. A characteristic example that comes from the exhibition Dimensions in Testimony, an initiative developed by the University of Southern California Shoah Foundation in association with the Illinois Holocaust Museum, which uses 3D holography to capture and preserve testimonies of Holocaust survivors. This case study is presented and discussed in a chapter by Elena Stylianou in the book Emerging Technologies and Museums Mediating Difficult Heritage, which explores how holograms can open up the narrative space of the museum to include personal accounts and offer alternative tools for storytelling that extend curatorial practices relevant to representing difficult and traumatic histories. The specific interactive installation captures and preserves the testimonies of Holocaust survivors and allows visitors to interact with the survivors' holograms without the use of headsets. Let's have a look at this video to get a glimpse of what this experience looked like.
How did you survive hiding in an attic from the Nazis?
Life in hiding was full of fear, hunger, and cold. But through it all, hoped and believed that I would learn. The message is simple. Be an upstand. Be involved. Make a difference.
Now, these interviews with Holocaust survivors were recorded with more than 100 cameras in a dome that we see here on the slide. Then the holograms of the survivors were projected onto a holographic stage with people in the audience having the ability to ask questions to the holograms. When holograms are asked a question, the responses are generated using automatic speech recognition and natural language processing to locate the most appropriate answer for the question asked, giving the illusion of real-time, one-to-one, and face-to-face dialogue. As noted by the curators of the Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center, how can we get people to use the lessons of the past to transform the future, to build empathy and an understanding of our common humanity, working towards a day when never again is a reality for all people? The answer is combining historical storytelling with technology. And indeed, this has proven a very powerful and emotional experience for the audience. Another example comes from Diego Galafasi, a transdisciplinary artist from Brazil. In the book Museum and Technologies of Presence, Galafasi presents his project Breathe and the creative process and learnings of an augmented reality experience that highlights the fundamental interdependence between the human body and the biosphere through the act of breathing. The project turns our attention toward the relationship between presence and experiences that have the potential to raise awareness of the climate emergency and eventually instigate change. The aim of the project was to explore how an artistic register focused on a sense of presence could promote increased sensitivity and new effective responses towards the natural world and ongoing global environmental change. As Galafasi explains, and let me just...
When you sing.
As Galafasi explains in the chapter, the project constituted an artistic experience that harnessed augmented reality technology to create a shared participatory experience and installation that contemplates breath and our relationship with the atmosphere. The central proposition was to make breathing visible and tangible, as you can see on the video, to create an experience of our fundamental relationship to the natural world through the atmosphere, thereby creating a sense of presence with nature, as you can see here on this short film. Through a combination of biometric data and augmented reality visuals, the participants were invited to breathe in different ways and explore their own breathing. As a participant exhaled, a cloud of fine, colorful particles would be seen, and this cloud would begin to disperse in the room and react to the person's body movement, as seen on the image here. The particles could also respond to hand gestures, and all these were possible through see-through AR goggles, capable of displaying augmented reality content and reading interactions from participants via hand gestures and body position. Participants could also turn to other co-participants and see how the air is shared in the room. This project is also a good example of how such experiences can induce co-presence and facilitate new understandings of the interconnections between our bodies and the environment. Another example, also related to the environment and how we communicate the profound challenges of climate change through immersive forms of display, is presented by Colin Sterling in the book Emerging Technologies and Museums Mediating Difficult Heritage. In his chapter, Sterling discusses how the consequences of climate change need to be experienced to be understood and addressed in a meaningful way, and how technology may help us not to just intellectually understand, but viscerally feel and internalize these issues in a way that inspires action. The Great Animal Orchestra, discussed by Sterling in his chapter, is an immersive digital installation created by London-based arts practice United Visual Artists in response to an archive of 15,000 animal noises collected by sound ecologist Bernie Krause since the 1960s. Now, the immersive environment that you can see on the screen essentially three-dimensionalizes sound through a software algorithm that translates sonic data into light, creating a live spectrogram that seems to inscribe various animal sounds onto the walls of the physical space, which has a pitch black room surrounded by three sides by a shallow pool of water. The soundscapes included in the experience are the evidence of a rapid decline in biodiversity over the past 5 decades, with 50% of the sites at which Krause carried out his recordings now being completely silent, mostly as a result of human endeavors. The last aspect of immersive technologies relating to presence that we will explore in this presentation is their ability to make visible what is invisible by turning absence into presence. Museums, by their nature, often deal with the absent, lost objects, historical figures who have long since passed, our cultures that have changed or disappeared. By employing virtual reconstructions, augmented reality overlays, or interactive digital environments, museums can bring these absences to life. Thus, technology can restore the presence of what is physically absent, providing a new depth to the experience. Similarly, these technologies also have the unique capability to turn absence into presence. In many museum collections, what is missing is just as important as what is present. Voices that were silenced, stories untold, or groups that were marginalized, all these are equally important. Interactive digital exhibits can give voice to these absences, bringing marginalized narratives into the center of the museum experience. By revealing hidden histories, underrepresented perspectives, or erased cultural contributions, museums can create a presence where there was once an absence, enriching the interpretive framework and encouraging more inclusive engagements. A good example of this is presented by Edward Gonzalez Tennant in the book Emerging Technologies and Museums Mediating Difficult Heritage. In his chapter, Edward discusses a case of heritage that was completely destroyed and thus currently absent. The 1923 Rosewood Massacre in the US involved a series of increasingly violent events that ended with the displacement of the town's mostly African-American community and the destruction of all Black-owned structures. The author elaborates on how the town was virtually reconstructed with the help of archaeological excavations, remote sensing, documentary videos, and geographic information systems. With the help of technology, the destroyed heritage of a disadvantaged community was reconstructed and once again brought to the surface to point towards racial injustice. Through the virtual environment created, users can interact with different forms of information, such as the material culture of the period, relevant archaeological and documentary data, oral histories of survivors and descendants that describe their lives in Rosewood and beyond, and so on. On the link that you can see on the slide, you can access the project's website that includes the research, educational material, and the actual VR experience. Our final example comes from Iceland and focuses on how immersive sound technologies can create a sense of being or returning to a traumatic event, and in particular, a volcanic eruption. This case study is discussed by Arnar Arnarsson and Sigurjón Baldur Hafsteinsson in their chapter in the book Museums and Technologies of Presence, in which they explore the role of sound technologies in the creation of a sense of presence within the scope of traumatic events. The Eithmar Museum in Iceland aims to commemorate a 1973 volcanic eruption, which necessitated the abrupt and dramatic midnight evacuation of approximately 5,000 inhabitants. The eruption brought destruction to a significant part of the inhabited area. Many people lost their homes and belongings, and many of the evacuees never returned to the island to live there. People who later did return home were confronted with a significantly changed landscape, a home brought unfamiliar. The 8-Mar Museum is built around the preserves and preserves one of the houses that was buried in the volcanic ash, as you can see on the slide. The museum uses state-of-the-art technology to create a sense of being in the presence of the volcanic eruption and the danger that being so present entails. Emphasis is placed on the acetylene sounds of volcanic eruption, using recordings from the eruption itself as much as possible. By recreating the volcanic eruption that dramatically transformed the landscape, the museum bridges the gap between past and present, offering visitors an opportunity to experience a moment in history that remains physically absent. Using recordings from the eruption itself, combined with visual and auditory simulations, the museum transports visitors to a space that no longer exists in its original form. This approach renders the invisible trauma of loss, destruction, and displacement into a palpable sensory reality. Visitors can engage directly with the overwhelming sounds and visuals of the eruption, bringing to life an event that is both temporally and spatially removed from the present. In doing so, the museum turns an otherwise distant historical event into a vivid, embodied experience, allowing visitors to connect emotionally and empathetically with the lives and experiences of the evacuees, making the absent past feel tangibly present. The case studies now we examined show a large array of possibilities that these technologies create for enhancing visitors' sense of presence, embodiment, and emotional connection. However, we should proceed with caution. While technology is a powerful tool, it is not a solution to all problems. First of all, using emerging technologies has to make sense. They should be carefully selected and utilized with a problem in mind. With each new technological advancement, museums may feel the pressure to adopt the latest tools and stay relevant or attract new audiences. However, this pursuit of the next big thing can lead to expensive installations that become outdated quickly or fail to deliver long-term value to the visitor experience. Second, all kinds of technologies have advantages and disadvantages. For example, back in 2020, we conducted interviews with museum professionals from a number of countries around the world who worked with VR projects in their own institutions. The museum professionals identified both advantages and disadvantages regarding VR applications in museums. So we need to be aware of the limitations of its technology to be able to choose wisely the best technological solution for a given problem. Museums must maintain a careful balance between using immersive technologies to enhance presence and ensuring that the technology serves as a complement to the museum's mission rather than as a distraction. This requires a critical curatorial approach to the adoption of new media, ensuring that the technological interventions deepens rather than diminishes the visitor's connection to this content. Finally, it is important to emphasize that immersive technologies should be seen as tools for critical engagement, not mere spectacle. Successful integration of technology into museum experiences should provoke reflection, invite multiple interpretations, and encourage visitors to actively participate in constructing meaning rather than passively consuming the experience. When used well, immersive technologies can challenge visitors to think more deeply about the content, ask critical questions, and engage emotionally and intellectually with the stories being told. In conclusion, and looking ahead, the evolving role of technology will likely continue to push the boundaries of how presence is felt and understood in museum settings. As technological innovations advance, they will offer new possibilities for even more immersive and inclusive experiences, allowing museums to engage diverse audiences in increasingly profound ways. The future of presence in museums is not only a technological frontier, but also an opportunity for deeper human connection, storytelling, and cultural reflection. Thank you very much for your attention, and we would be more than happy to answer to any of your questions.